welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by PlayPicks and thelines.com. I'm your host today, flying solo Nate Weitzer on the East Coast, as Josh Lander is out there on the West Coast getting married, as we mentioned in our last player props episode together. But I will continue to bring you solo videos the rest of the week here until I head out there for his big day. Then we'll have a week off and resume for big conference finals and finals action, bringing you that full slate per usual, every game video and player props. You can find all this written content at playpicks.com and thelines.com while we're gone as well. Still writing up a storm there, both NBA and MLB. Please do like and subscribe to the page so you don't miss a beat when we do come back. And if you do need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find these listings in your local area. We got some game sixes tonight here with the road team looking to close out both number one seeds, Miami at Philly and Phoenix at Dallas. And right off the top, I'll tell you, I have a lot more confidence in Phoenix than Miami closing out, reading more into the home road splits there. Let's look at the lines real quick. I mean, both are almost the same thing, with Miami actually plus 2.5. So odds makers agreeing with me that Miami, you should have less confidence about them closing out. And Phoenix is -2 at Dallas. Total is 207 in Philly, and that total in Dallas has dropped actually from 212 to 210. Looking at the Philly game first here, now Philly is plus 310 to win both of these games. They just looked completely inept on the road in Miami, so it is a long shot that they win game 7. But I lean slightly towards the Sixers extending this series. The thing I like more, actually, though, is the over at 207, because I think the Heat offense will rebound after just a dreadful game 3. In that first game with Embiid back was kind of a shock. And then a mediocre game 4. They shot 21% from 3 in those two games, 93.5 points per game. That's the only reason to scare you off from an over. But, I mean, we still did go over with them getting 108 in that second game. And the big difference for me is the addition by subtraction if Kyle Lowry sits. He's just not healthy. He was 0 for 8 from 3, 6 points and a -11 in his time on the floor. And the Heat offense is going to be a lot more free-flowing if he's out there. If he's not out there, with Tyler Hero moving the ball, Jimmy doing what he's done, which is exploiting the Sixers all over the floor, getting the switches he wants. He had 15 points on Embiid in game 4. And then Max Strus, who's been extremely underrated, actually has the highest plus-minus in the entire playoffs right now at plus 119. He can catch fire. I think Miami will be more competitive in this game. We're not going to see another blowout as the home road splits continue that way. I think it'll be close down the stretch, and Miami will continue to score, leaning on Jimmy. For me, the Sixers' success is going to hinge on James Harden, not really going out on a huge limb there. I mean, that's why they brought this guy in. That's why they depleted their depth to get a second option alongside Embiid. And he's just far more likely to come through down the stretch at home. In that second half in game 4, he finally delivered that clutch playoff performance we were looking for from an all-time great regular season player who had not really performed in the playoffs. He had 18 points, 4 for 7 from 3, including a bunch of clutch ones in that fourth quarter. For him to get 20 plus in a win is plus 178. And that's where I would go with the money line here. Rather than Philly's just minus 130, if you're taking them straight up, I think they need 20 at least from Harden. His prop is at 20.5 points. Embiid barely getting any odds to go over 25.5 points. So odds makers, again, agreeing that they expect Harden to handle a little bit more of the bulk of the scoring, because Embiid is dealing with both torn ligaments in his thumb and a concussion that's kept him out for a while. Harden shoots 10 percentage points better at home from 3 when he in versus 31% on the road in these playoffs. So definitely something to like there against Miami, which is going to pack it in, right? They're going to deny the drive for Harden. So he kind of adjusted to that in game 4, was able to get going on his step back, which is going to be there if they're going to be that aggressive, denying him going to the paint. And conversely, I think you like Jimmy Butler. I mean, I like Jimmy Butler to get 25 points anyway, which is his prop 26. For him to get one below that at 25 plus in a win is plus 240 for Miami. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking that bet here. I do think Miami has a much better chance of winning on the road in this series than the Sixers, given the circumstances. And Butler that really just carried his team on the road in games 3 and 4, scoring 40% of their points, 73 points on nearly 60% field goal shooting, as I mentioned, hunting some switches, basically shooting perfect over Danny Green when he was the individual defender. Tobias Harris doing a slightly better job, but that did tip the floor, allowing Miami to get the shots they wanted. I trust Eric Spoelstra to have some good adjustments in place so that they don't struggle so badly on the road anymore. And again, they didn't struggle that badly in game 4. They got 108 versus the 79 in game 3. Miami's been a sneaky team to the over this season, 16-9 to the over as underdogs and 13-7 as road dogs. 10-4 to the over when they're on a back-to-back or no rest, going over by 6 points per game. Yes, they have one day off here, but it's a bit exhausting at this point when you're playing every other day in the playoffs. So just something to look at there. and Philly, they haven't really gone over consistently at home in these playoffs, but they've had these spike games where they've scored a lot, and it's just the other team hasn't come along. So really my game theory here is that Miami's going to be able to come along this time. Not going to get held below 100 necessarily. They're going to be there right down to the end. They're such a tough team. They're going to make it tough for Philly to extend the series, and I'm not really very confident that they're going to. I think it will take a pretty solid performance from Harden down the stretch with Embiid getting collapsed on. There is some numbers suggesting the Sixers do bounce back from just never even getting off the bus or the plane in Miami for that game 5, and they were just utterly waxed on the road. But they are 23-12 after a loss this season. They shot 49% from 3 at home in these 2 games. Now they don't have necessarily the emotional lift of Embiid coming back to spark them, but they do have the lift of getting embarrassed on the road, and I think that they will come to play here on both ends, but they can't necessarily stop Miami if the Heat are moving and using their scheme the way they should. And if Kyle Lowry is not there clogging things up, honestly, if he's not able to slash and kick, which is what they need to do, that ball and player movement around Bam, using Jimmy as a facilitator and a scorer, and getting Tyler Hero going. He didn't really get going at all in those 2 Philly games. So again, slight edge to the Sixers here to extend the series, but I think the over is the play in game 6, just 207, very juicy odds there. And I think you could tease it down with the other game if you want to get a little bit more odds there. So switching gears here to the Western Conference game as Phoenix goes back to Dallas. Phoenix also struggled in Dallas, not to the same degree as Miami, I would say, or really I'm just not reading into the results as much. I mean, the game 3 where Chris Paul and Devin Booker were blitzed relentlessly, they turned it over like crazy. And then they were unable. They were still kind of in the game, though, down the stretch is the thing. And then game 4, of course, CP3 fouls out, only plays 25 minutes, just a completely uncharacteristic meltdown from one of the savviest, best playoff performers we've had. And a playoff performer who recently has kind of dispelled that narrative that he can't get his team out of X round. And that's just bullshit. Frankly, I mean, circumstances have led to his team's falling early, against some great teams like the Spurs team that went on to the championship, for example. But in his recent closeout games, CP3 has just been an absolute monster. 33-8 on the, of course, perfect 14 for 14 field goal shooting to close out NOLA this year. Last year, 41-8 on 16 for 24 field goal shooting against the Clippers, and 37-7 on 14 for 19 against the Nuggets to close out those series. So I think you can expect an efficient performance from Paul down the stretch here. He kind of chilled in game 5 because, I kind of theorized that the entire team would rally around him after his family was accosted in the stands in Dallas. And they did. And they went on to a 30-point win, a total balanced team effort. Really, it was about being physical in terms of getting the ball to Ayton, who went 9 for 13 from the field. Paul had 10 assists helping with that. Outscoring Dallas 44-24 in the paint, and then just closing out on their 3-point shooters, which was had to be a huge point of emphasis after that was basically how Dallas got all the offense in Dallas. They go 8 for 32 from 3. That's 25%. They had a 9-16 assist to turnover ratio, which is just abysmal. And in the second half, in particular, 2 for 16 from 3, just 34 points total. Dallas is not going to be able, if they can't score in the paint and they can't get these good looks from 3, they're definitely in trouble. the right approach from the Suns to just let Luka Doncic and Brunson score in isolation, but not let Dallas get going with any assists, because Reggie Bullock scoreless, Dorian Finney-Smith 8 points, and I know we expect role players to struggle like that on the road and then bounce back at home. Yes, I do expect some positive regression there, but this was a 30-point loss. This was a total re-emphasis of we're better than you. We beat you 11 straight times coming into this series. We can beat you here. We can beat you there. So the Suns at -2, I feel pretty damn confident that they're going to close out this series. And I feel confident that Chris Paul is going to have a good game down the stretch. Also a live betting opportunity to consider. Look, in the second half, particularly in those two games in Dallas, Phoenix first went 4 for 15 from three and shot 40% without CP3. That was actually in game 4. In game 3, or in both the games together, they had a free throw edge. They did turn the ball over a lot. They even turned the ball over a lot in the second half of this blowout win in Phoenix. And in the second half of the closeout game in New Orleans, they had 7 turnovers too, but they shot 70% from the field. So it's okay to toss the ball around a little bit as long as you're able to get back in transition. If you're going to shoot at that ridiculous high percentage, Phoenix was the most clutch team in the entire NBA. On the road, of course, 34 net rating on road games in the clutch. And they were 18-3 in those situations. You go to the playoffs, 2-0 in the clutch on the road, and a 155 offensive rating. I think Dallas, very impressive how they were in the clutch after the All-Star break, especially at home, but I don't think they're there yet where the point guard is in terms of having Booker on his side and having the advantage down low, frankly. I mean, Dwight Powell also scoreless in that game 5. DeAndre Ayton just eating his lunch, and then Biyombo off the bench for plus 20. Monty Williams has the luxury of either bringing him or JaVale McGee out, depending what he wants to do in terms of his adjustments against this Dallas team that, really can't defend the paint too consistently with Powell, or they can defend it with Powell, but then their offense is going to suffer. But then they're going to have to go with Maxi Kleba to find that spark from 3, to find that spacing that they need to consistently find scoring outside of Doncic and Brunson. And I don't know if they can do that. I'm not really messing with the total here, although the numbers are very strong in terms of Dallas just going under at home in terms of the pace and their defensive rating being 17 points better in these playoffs when they're at home, and them scoring 7 points per game fewer. But the key here is that they shoot 5 percentage points worse from 3. And so I think it's more of an outlier in game 4 that when they shot 45%, whatever it was, and now they shoot 25% on the road. I think we'll be somewhere in the middle there. And the magic number is probably about 35%. If they can't hit over that, I don't see them being able to beat this Suns team, which is one of the more confident teams, I feel like, closing out on the road. And there is evidence that Phoenix is probably going to regress a little bit in terms of their 3-point shooting on the road, but they're not really a team that needs to shoot threes. And that's the thing we talked about coming into the series. That's why they had won so many consistently against Dallas, the number 1 3-point defense by percentage. But the Suns, they get their money in the mid-range and down low. And now that they got back to those basics and fed Ayton so much, scored so much in the paint, and defended the paint, they had 61 points. They still were 8 for 18 from 3 in that second half. And again, 8 turnovers, but it wasn't a big deal because they were getting such a high quality of shot there. So not going to be easy, but a 2-point spread, I do think you can back the Suns there. And I'm not messing with the total again, but I would look at some bonuses with CP3, would consider his props in a closeout game. As Dallas, their tendency to just blitz him, try to get the ball out of his hands, didn't really work in this game 5. The Suns are a balanced team. They're probably going to be heading back to the finals. We'll see. The way Golden State looked against Memphis, it wasn't pretty. So either way, I think they take care of business here, get the veterans some extra rest before they head into those conference finals. Trust Phoenix to close it out. Looking at a couple game 6s tonight, with the number 1 seeds, Miami and Phoenix, looking to close out their series on the road. And that means Jimmy Butler, for me, is a go-to guy. Look, he's been fantastic in the playoffs overall the last few years, but this year he's taken on much bigger scoring load For the Heat, 28.3 points per game on 54% field goal shooting. His usage rate is up to 29% after it was 24% those last 2 years, including that 2020 bubble run. In his last three in particular, two of them just heroic individual efforts in Philly against his former team. We did forecast that he would be fired up to stick it to those fans who are not even very nice to their own team. So Jimmy definitely doesn't have any love lost there. He scored 36.5 points per game, produced 40% of Miami's points in those road games. And now in his last three, he's getting 32 points per game as he went back to Miami and continued that barrage against the Sixers defense that just doesn't really have any answers for him. Tobias Harris has done the best individual job on him, but he still isn't that guy in terms of keeping Jimmy in front of him. Just so skilled in terms of his mid-range game and his ability to get to the rim. So strong, gets you on his hip. And then he's just calm, finishing very well. As we mentioned, 60% field goal shooting these last three. And then he's hunting switches, trying to make Embiid work, keep him tired as the Sixers are struggling to get Embiid going at that MVP level as he's dealing with multiple injuries. And Jimmy will continue to hunt him. He's such a smart player and such a crafty veteran. So at just 25.5 points, pretty much even money there. I think you got to like the player performance doubles if you think Miami's going to pull out this win. As I mentioned in the game video, I think their offense will be more balanced and better overall without Kyle Lowry if he does continue to sit. He's just not healthy and he's not helping the team. So that is partially why we saw such an explosion in Game 5 from Miami's offense. And now as they go on the road, it's probably not going to be as much of a team explosion as much as it is leaning on Jimmy. A little bit of Bam Adebayo facilitating, but Jimmy's really going to take that scoring load. So 25 plus in a win is plus 240 and 30 in a win plus 540. I don't have any problem with that. Just the odds there, even though I do kind of lean towards Philly winning this game, I think plus 540 is worth a fire for a guy who's averaging slightly over 30 right now. Then we go to the other side of the ball, and it's James Harden, very much a boom bust option. If you're looking at props here, I actually don't really love the 20.5 points because, like I said, you don't know how he's going to perform down the stretch, but he has figured something out in terms of being able to beat this Miami team from deep. He's saying, all right, PJ Tucker's going to body me. He knows how I like to drive to the basket. He's not really, Harden not really able to drive past anybody at this stage in his career. So he's starting to lean on that step back three a little bit more and has been connecting in the last two games. He's 8 for 16 from three, including 6 for 10 in that home game in Game 4, 4 for 7 in the fourth quarter to help Philly close it out. He's getting plus 102 to just hit 3 threes tonight, which is what he's averaging since Embiid came back and the quality of his looks really went up. 3 3-pointers per game at 39%, along with 20, almost 21 points per game, 7 rebounds, 6.5 assists. I don't hate taking the points again. I think you can take the player performance double for Harden to get 20 at least in a win. It's plus 178 at FanDuel. The Sixers are absolutely going to need that if they're going to pull this off. And his usage rate and his scoring up a little bit at home in these playoffs. As I mentioned, the key stat here, though, again for the threes, shooting 41% from three at home versus 31% on the road. So that is definitely where I'd put my money there. I mean, he could have an awful game and still go 3 for 9, 3 for 11 from three, as we've grown accustomed to with Harden in these clutch playoff games. Sometimes he has those really rough shooting games, but he could still hit that prop for you. So definitely like the juice you get there. Switching out to the game out in Dallas with Phoenix trying to close out. I mean, Chris Paul, we did try to target him in Game 5 based on the narrative that he was disrespected, his family was really attacked, and he had a very frustrating experience in that Game 4. But he didn't necessarily have to do any heavy lifting down the stretch. So he scored just 7 points, handed out 10 dimes, and chilled in a 30-point win. But I don't think it's going to be that easy in Dallas now as we go back there. And when the going gets tough, CP3 gets going. Of course, he's an incredible playoff performer and clutch performer this year. You look in the second half of these playoffs, 11.5 points per game on 59% field goal shooting. You look at clutch performance, the last 5 minutes of games within 5 points on the road, he's shooting 71.5% with a 152 offensive rating. Phoenix has a 155 offensive rating in those clutch situations on the road, and it's because of CP3. And then I mentioned the closeout performances recently. He had that perfect performance against NOLA, 33-8 on 14-14 field goal shooting, 41-8 against the Clippers last year, 37-7 against the Mavs, shot way over 60% in both of those games. I don't know if Dallas is going to let him get to his spots as much and get going in terms of his shooting, but 15.5 points is pretty low. I do think you can take the over there. If you do think Dallas is going to continue to sell out, which really just didn't work out for them in game 5, 9.5 assists is plus 115 at FanDuel. You can take the 10 assists and a win for the player performance double, but again, I just love the juice you can get here. 23 points in a win for CP3 is plus 940 at FanDuel, or 18 in a win plus 320. He's averaging 18 in the playoffs. Like I said, if it's a close game, he's far more likely to start scoring a lot down the stretch, get you those 11.5 points in the second half, even if he's quiet in the first half. Definitely a good chance he gets around 20 points here, and I do like Phoenix to pull out the win. And then the last pick on the other side of the ball, Jalen Brunson, had a really rough start to the series in Phoenix. 2 games where the Mavs couldn't get anything going outside of Luka Doncic, and Jason Kidd asked somebody else to join the party, and then I'm sure drew up some X's and O's to get Brunson involved. And in his last 3, Brunson, 22.5 points, 5 rebounds, nearly 4 assists, 30% usage rate. That's where they need him to be. I mean, he had a coming out party in the first 3 games of these playoffs without Luka. He's definitely capable of burning guys one-on-one. And that's the key here, is that Phoenix was really committed to staying home on Luka and Brunson in one-on-one situations in game 5. And that led to a lot of team success because the Mavs weren't able to get any threes going. That's going to be a point of emphasis for Phoenix as they go back to Dallas after getting scorched for 23-pointers in game 4. They're going to stay home on Brunson and Luka, and that's going to allow these guys to operate. Brunson is so tough going to the basket. He's going to try to be physical if Chris Paul is guarding him, make CP3 work. Mikal Bridges will be busy occupied with Doncic. So Brunson to get 19.5 points is slightly under even money, but it is a good bet here. You can combine it with the assists on DraftKings, 23.5 points assists to get better odds there. But that is where I'd turn in terms of the points. In the playoffs at home, he's averaging 27 points per game, more rebounds, 5.5, more assists, 4.5. So nothing wrong with combining all the stats for Brunson. I think both him and Luka are going to have very good statistical games, just like they did in game 5, but I don't think Dallas is going to win this game. And, even with those guys producing, it's just not going to be the overall team effort that they need, or they're not going to get the quality of looks they need from 3 with those guys going one-on-one so much. But that doesn't mean you can't get their props together. And that is all the time we have for you today. Please stay tuned. One more player props episode for you solo tomorrow, along with the 2 game videos as we look at the Bucks and Grizzlies playing game 6s. And until we see you next, happy betting.